Here's our tomato fermentation experiment and recipe. Give you some ideas of what it looks like along with the photos and such. First off, I want to show you the liquid at the bottom. This has been fermenting for about 5 days, and you see how much liquid's on the bottom, and then you see the tomatoes are starting to float. And I want to point out the mold that's on top. A lot of people are afraid of that. The white mold is perfectly fine, and we're going to pull the lid off and give you a better shot here so you can see. A lot of people will throw out this project at this point, or this recipe at this point, but the white mold is absolutely fine. That's part of the lactobacillus that's naturally occurring in the tomatoes, so you don't have to worry about that at all. You stir that in. We're going to actually strain it to get the seeds and the seeds and skins out, so you'll see that here in just a second. But this is what it starts with. It's ready for straining. We're going to transfer the tomatoes into the colander, or into the strainer, to get started. The idea with fermenting the tomatoes is to increase their flavor. It really concentrates their flavor. The fermentation deepens and adds complexity to the flavor, and the straining, what we're doing now and what we're going to put into the cheesecloth, all that liquid drains out, so you're left with kind of the essence of the tomato. You're left with the really, really rich tomatoey goodness, and that is what you're really wanting when you're going for the cold winters and what's going on there. So that you have this taste of summer, taste of sunshine. So we do this several times until the container's empty, and we'll switch shots and show you what it looks like on the other side. Okay, we have the bowl full, and you see a little bit of mold and stuff in there, and that's fine. You don't have to worry about that at all. The nice thing with the strainer, I've shown it being set up before, is the pulp is going to come out of here, the skins and seed, not the pulp, I'm sorry, the skins and seed will come out here, the pulp and the juice will come here, and it's just as simple as cranking it. And we've already had this set up using it for tomato sauce, so we're just continuing with this, and you just kind of feed this in, because at this point the tomatoes are really soft. And once again, we need to invent a smell-o-vision, because the aroma of the fermented tomatoes is not at all unpleasant. It's got this really rich, not quite cooked, but a very rich, very ripe, very full aromatic tomato aroma that's going on in here, and it's really quite pleasant. So this is why fermenting the tomatoes and doing the straining takes them to about 8 to 10% of their original weight and volume, simply because you see the juice that's coming out and the pulp, and all that's going to be left after we strain it through the cheesecloth for several days is going to be that pulp. The juice is going to all drain away. So what you're left with is just all this. It's going to be really, really concentrated. So we're going to add some more here and continue the process. And I'm not really worried about the juice, because the juice is just going to strain out. So it's not a big deal at all. And this is really, really simple. The time invested so far has been the time to slice the tomatoes, and we basically just cut them in half. We cut any bad spots out, put them in the container that you saw, and left them alone for 5 days. You can go longer, you can go shorter. It just really depends on your taste preferences. I wanted a little more fermented flavor, so I let it go 5 days. Some people will, do it for 2 or 3 days. And it really doesn't matter on that. I suppose you don't even have to ferment them. You can run them through the strainer like this and then drain it in the cheesecloth for several days and then salt it and you're done. But it'll still have a really good flavor, but there's just something to be said about that fermented tomato flavor. So this, you're seeing all the juice come out because we're getting down to the bottom of the container where the tomatoes are fermenting, so you're getting a lot of the juice. And you're seeing the pulp on the left-hand side. You're seeing how dry that is in comparison. So this gives us just the pure essence of the tomatoes. This is a good way to use some not 100% fully ripe tomatoes. You're seeing some of the lighter colors in here. The fermenting, kind of like roasting the tomatoes, it really adds richness to their flavor, so you don't have to worry if the tomatoes aren't perfectly ripe. So this is a perfect way to use the late season tomatoes, kind of the last of the harvest when the frosts come in, or we've had some late rains and we've just been hammered with grasshoppers this year. So this is a really good way to use those that aren't quite perfect, or if you've already done a lot of canning, a lot of dehydrating, a lot of preserving, and you need another way. So you see how quick it is, you see how easy it is. I'm going to finish the rest of this bucket up, and then we'll show you what it looks like going into the cheesecloth. Okay, we've got our bowl pretty well full of juice and the pulp, so now we need to start the straining process so I can finish the rest of it. So we're using an old dish towel, a really heavy, a nice dish towel, to give the final straining. We're going to pour the liquid into here and then put it into a colander or hang it, and it's going to drain until the pulp is a consistency and the dryness that I want. So it could be here for a week in this, but that's not a big deal. And it's going to get mold again on the outside, and that's fine. We just scrape it off. That white mold is not harmful at all. So here's our bucket, or our bowl that we had with the extractor that removed the pulp from the seeds and skins. And we're just going to pour this right into here. Okay, now we've got the rest of the tomatoes strained, separated from the seeds and skins. So this is the final part. You just gather everything together, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to let it sit here for the next however long it takes. I'll put it into a colander, and the juice is just going to drain from it, and you'll be left with the solids there that are the real concentrates of the flavors. So that's how it works. I'll show you in a couple days what the sack looks like with as it drains. We've had the tomato paste draining for a few days now. I think it's been about 3 days, and we don't have any more drainage into the bowl, so it should be ready for the next stage, pulling it out of the cheesecloth and adding the salt to it. And if we take a closer look, you can see the mold, the white mold, forming again on the outside of the bag, and that's okay. It has a fermented flavor, or an aroma, so you definitely don't want to do this in a small enclosed room, because the aroma when you walk in is not expected. It's not unpleasant, it's just different than what we're used to. So here's where we're at. What we did was the colander method for a day or so until it got a little drier, and then we switched to a pasta drying rack. That's what this contraption is, and you see the arms over there. We just opened it up a little bit.
So we'll show you what we do next. And here we have our tools. I don't know exactly what I'm going to need to scrape the Conserve out, so I've got a couple of silicone spatulas and then a butter knife. This is what little bowl's what it's going to go into, and then I've got salt here. So let's take a look. And you can see the Conserve is kind of spread out over everything because of the drainage that was happening. And if you want, you can scrape all of that out, or you can go right to the heart of the matter. And there we go. So the amazing thing, if you remember what the volume we started with, and then we wound up, I'll do this later, and we wound up with this as the remainder. This is what's left. Now after I wash my hands, we can add some salt. The Italians will add in their traditional recipe about 25% by volume, which makes a very, very salty Conserve, and they don't refrigerate it. I think I'm going to do a little bit less than that. That's about 2 teaspoons. And then we'll mix that in and give it a taste to see what the flavor's like. As I was doing this fermentation, especially as we started getting down into this paste consistency, the thought that I had was if you're going to do more than one batch, definitely do just a basic batch so you've got the tomato flavor. But the other thought that I had was adding some freshly dried herbs and other spices to do whatever makes the most sense for if you wanted to do a Mediterranean type of paste, or if you wanted to do a mostly Italian paste, or you could do even some of the regional Italian pastes. So there's a lot of different ways to go. But this is the final result after about a week's worth of fermentation and drying, maybe just a little bit longer down, probably 8 or 9 days. But you wind up with a Conserve. I'm seeing a couple little seeds in there, but not very many at all. But you can see the consistency of it, and it's a really nice paste. It's ready to use. It's really rich and flavorful, so you can make it yourself. One final note on the fermentation smell that's in the bag and in the bucket versus what this smells like. This smells like the tomato paste you're going to get out of a can. This has this really, really rich, fresh, actually it smells a lot fresher than the tomato paste out of a can. The fermentation does have, obviously a fermented smell. It's not bad, it's just not what a lot of people are used to as far as a scent or an odor. But what comes out is completely, does not have that fermented smell at all. So if you're kind of put off by that, don't worry, the final product does not have that fermented smell. It's got this really nice, mild flavor as far as the fermentation, but it's really rich. It's just like concentrated tomatoes. It's really, really nice. So just don't be put off by the fermented smell versus what you're going to get in the final product. You'll be pleasantly surprised.